The first thing I registered was the smell, a sharp, sterile sting of antiseptic that burned my nose. The second was the sound, a rhythmic, electronic beep. My eyes slowly focused, cracking open against a blinding white light. The beep was coming from a machine beside the bed. Its small screen was flashing, red. A woman in scrubs stood over me. Her face was kind but tired. She smiled, a small, professional gesture. "Welcome back. You gave us quite a scare." My throat felt like sandpaper. "Where am I?" "You're at St. Jude's Memorial Hospital. You were in an accident, a hit and run," she said. Her voice was gentle, but the words were hard. "You have been comatose for 6 hours." 6 hours! The world tilted. I tried to sit up, but a wave of dizziness slammed me back into the pillow. My entire body ached, a deep, bruising throb. "Easy now," the woman said. She was a doctor. "You are mostly fine. Severe concussion, some deep bruising, but no broken bones. You were very lucky." She paused, her gaze softening as she looked at my chart, then back at me. "There is something else. We ran a full panel while you were unconscious. Elena, you are pregnant." The words hung in the air, heavier than the antiseptic smell. Pregnant. The beeping of the monitor seemed to get louder, a frantic pulse in my ears. I had suspected. I had avoided the test, hoping that not knowing would make it less real. But it was real. Before I could absorb the shock, a nurse bustled in. She was checking the IV drip in my arm when her phone buzzed on the tray table. The screen lit up. I could read the text notification even from my bed. "Emergency contact on file Matteo Leone." My blood ran cold, a fear sharper than the accident. "No," I whispered. My voice was hoarse. "That is a mistake." The nurse glanced at the phone, then at me, confused. "He is listed in your file. Ma'am, we had to call him." I never put his name down. I had been so careful. When I left Matteo, I erased every trace of him from my life. I had changed my name, my phone number, my entire existence. I had built a small, quiet world where I was just Elena Hart, the pastry chef, a world where he could not find me. A different doctor entered then, the first one superior, perhaps. She was an older woman with sharp eyes. She quietly dismissed the nurse. She stepped closer to my bed, lowering her voice. "Miss Hart, my name is Dr. Angeli. Someone wants you protected. We were strongly encouraged to place security outside your door." My heart hammered against my ribs. I looked toward the door. The glass panel was frosted, but I could see the distinct silhouette of a man in a dark suit pass by, broad shoulders and a measured, powerful stride. He was not hospital security. He was one of his... My hand instinctively went to my stomach. Protected, the word was a mockery. As if summoned by my fear, my own phone, which had been placed on the bedside table with my few belongings, lit up. It was not a call. It was a text from a number I did not recognize. The message was short. "Don't sign the discharge papers. You leave, you die." I stared at the words, the casual threat, the chilling finality. They knew I was here. They knew I was alive. A moment later, the same nurse from before poked her head back in, her expression flustered. "Dr. Angeli, I'm so sorry to interrupt, but there is a gentleman at the front desk. He is demanding that Miss Hart be moved to the VIP wing, immediately." I closed my eyes. I did not need to ask. I knew the velvet glove, the iron fist inside. It was Matteo's hand reaching across the city, across the 11 months of freedom I had scraped together, pulling me back into his orbit. I did not want him here. I had run from him, from the suffocating danger of his life, from the man he had to be, to save myself. But as the fear threatened to swallow me whole, a traitorous part of my heart ached, a stupid, lonely pang that recognized his brand of violent protection. I kept my hand pressed flat against my lower abdomen. A life, a tiny, unnamed, unknown life was curled inside me, his baby, and I was trapped. The door opened. The antiseptic smell, the beeping monitor, the muffled sounds of the hospital faded to nothing. He filled the doorway, Matteo Leone. He was exactly as I remembered, yet somehow more. He wore a dark gray suit that probably cost more than my apartment, tailored perfectly to his frame. His dark hair was immaculate, his olive skin smooth. Only his eyes were different. They were always different. They were the color of the harbor in winter, deep, cold, and turbulent. He was calm. Not a real calm, but the stillness of a predator, the stillness of ice. He walked into the room, and the air crackled. He did not look at the machines I was hooked up to. He looked at me. His gaze swept over me, assessing, cataloging, owning. Matteo, I breathed. His name was a betrayal on my lips. Elena, he said. His voice was a low rumble, devoid of warmth. They were aiming for you. He stopped at the foot of my bed. And now, it is not just you. He reached inside his suit jacket and pulled out a plain manila envelope. He did not hand it to me. He placed it on the rolling table near my bed. The car that hit you, it was reported stolen 2 hours before, but it was not. He slid a photograph from the envelope. It was a blurry shot of a dark sedan, but the license plate was clear. The plate is registered to a shell corporation, he continued, his voice flat, analytical. One that has been moving money for Victor Hale. The name meant nothing to me, but Matteo said it with a quiet venom. This was not a random accident. It was staged. It was a message, or it was a failure. He looked at me, his eyes pinning me to the bed. You left me to be safe. But they followed you because of me. You were never safe, Ana Elena. You were just away from me. The accusation in his words, the truth of them stung more than my injuries. I had been a fool. I had believed I could just walk away. Tears pricked my eyes, hot and angry, tears of fear, of pain, of pure, unadulterated rage. I was not going to tell you, I whispered. The confession torn from my throat, the words were out before I could stop them. I was not going to tell you about the baby. He froze. It was not a large movement. It was the barest stiffening of his shoulders, a fractional widening of his eyes, the mask of steel, the cold, controlled facade he wore like armor, cracked. For one single, solitary second. I saw the man beneath. I saw the 19-year-old boy he had been, the one who had once told me he would never have a family. And then he was gone. The mask slammed back into place. Harder than before, the ice returned, colder. Before he could speak, before I could breathe, a deafening wail ripped through the hospital. A loud, piercing alarm blared down the hallway. The lights overhead flickered, then shut off, plunging the room into the eerie half-light of the emergency exit signs. They flashed, red, 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 painting the room in blood. Matteo did not hesitate. He moved with a speed that was terrifying, crossing the room in 2 long strides. He grabbed my arm, his grip bruising, and hauled me from the bed. The IV ripped from my hand. I cried out as he pulled me tight against his hard body, his other hand already reaching inside his jacket. "They're here," he growled, his voice a deadly promise in the dark. A sob of relief tore from my throat. It was alive. After everything went in... It was alive. Dr. Klein smiled. 150 beats per minute. Absolutely perfect. The world dissolved into a chaos of noise and motion. The shrill wail of the fire alarm was a physical blow. Matteo's hand on my arm was a vice, hauling me from the thin mattress. My bare feet hit the cold floor just as the main lights died, plunging us into the flashing, rhythmic red of the emergency strobes. "Rafe," Matteo barked into his phone, his voice cutting through the din. He was already pulling me toward the door. "Protocol Blue. Now." His voice on the other end was instant, calm, and pure steel. "On it, they cut power to the east wing. Elevators are down. I have 2 men, masked, ascending the west stairs. They knew your room." Matteo did not curse. He did not waste the breath. He simply moved, pulling me into the corridor. It was pandemonium. Nurses were shouting, pushing a gurney. The flashing red light painted everything in a grotesque, stuttering nightmare. A man in a dark suit was at the stairwell door, Rafe Costa, and he must have run up from the garage. He had his hand inside his jacket. He saw us and jerked his head. This way. Boss. Protocol Blue means the roof. They will not be expecting that. He was right. They would expect us to go down, to the street. Elena, can you run? Mateo's voice was low in my ear, his breath hot against my skin. I did not have a choice. I nodded, clutching the thin, useless hospital gown, my hand splayed over my stomach. We did not go down. Rafe led us up. We took a restricted service stairwell, the one marked for maintenance. Rafe took the lead, Mateo behind me, his hand hot and heavy on the small of my back, propelling me forward. We moved past the 5th floor, the 6th. My legs burned. My lungs felt like they were full of ground glass. The concussion throbbed in my skull, a hammer blow with every step. Almost there, Rafe said. He was not even breathing hard. We burst through a final door onto the roof. The cold night air hit me like a slap. It was winter, and the wind coming off the harbor was brutal. Cutting through my thin gown, the city was a sea of lights below us, beautiful and indifferent. The alarm was fainter here, a distant shriek. In the center of the rooftop helipad, a sleek black helicopter sat waiting, its rotors already starting a slow, quiet turn. Another of Mateo's men was in the pilot's seat. Rafe scanned the roofline, his gun now in his hand, held low and professionally. Mateo did not let me go. He half lifted me, pushing me into the small cabin. I stumbled, falling onto a leather-clad bench. He followed me in, sliding the door shut just as Rafe climbed into the co-pilot's seat. The engine noise swelled from a hum to a roar. The helicopter lifted, a smooth, powerful surge that pressed me back into my seat. I looked down. I saw the flashing blue and red lights of police cars arriving at the hospital entrance, and I saw 2 figures in dark clothes on the roof we had just left, staring up at us, defeated. They had missed. The cabin was quiet, insulated from the rotor wash. Rafe turned, handing Mateo a tablet. They were good, Rafe said, his voice clipped. They had hospital schematics. They cut the cameras for exactly 7 minutes, timed it perfectly. They just did not count on you being there. Boss. Mateo ignored the compliment. His gaze was fixed on the screen. He turned it to me. It showed the same black sedan from the envelope in my room, registered to a shell company, one of Victor Hale's, part of the Harbor Syndicate. My breath caught. It was too fast, too much. The hit and run, the hospital, the assassins. How? I whispered, my voice shaking. How did they know I was there? How did they know which room? Mateo's face was carved from stone. He looked at Rafe. Rafe looked away, his expression grim. The leak is bad, boss. What leak? I demanded. Mateo looked at me. The icy control was back, but I saw something new beneath it. A cold, focused rage that was more terrifying than his anger. They did not just know you were there. Elena, they knew your condition. The hit was meant to cause a miscarriage. When it did not, they came to finish the job. My blood turned to ice. My hand, which had never left my stomach, tightened. They knew I was pregnant. I had only known for a few hours. Dr. Anjali, the nurse, Mateo, and someone else. Someone who had sold that information. Someone who had put a target on my baby. The helicopter landed gently on the roof of a glass and steel penthouse that overlooked the harbor. This was his place, the one I had run from. But he did not take me inside. He led me to a private elevator, one that went down, not into his home, but to a separate, fortified apartment, a safe house. It was sterile, luxurious, and utterly impersonal. Lucia Rossi was there. She was waiting, her face etched with worry. She had clothes for me, soft, warm silks and cashmere. She said nothing, just wrapped a thick robe around my trembling shoulders, her hands surprisingly gentle. When I was dressed, I found Mateo staring out the floor-to-ceiling windows at the city. Rafe stood by the door. I took a deep breath. The fear was still there, a cold snake in my gut, but the rage was hotter. 72 hours, I said. He turned slowly. You have 72 hours to fix this, I said, my voice gaining strength. I will stay here for the baby, not for you, for the baby. After that, I am gone. His jaw tightened. And one more thing. I am in charge of my body. I am in charge of my medical care. I am calling my doctor, Dr. Klein. She's the only person who will touch me. Your men can watch her. They can vet her. I do not care. But she is my doctor. Is that clear? I expected a fight. I expected him to steamroll me, to tell me his doctors were safer, that he would handle it. He just nodded, once. Done, he said. No imposition, only protection. Protection does not mean imprisonment, I shot back. I am not your prisoner, Mateo. You are not, he said, his voice quiet. You are the mother of my child. Before I could answer, his phone chimed with a text. He looked at it. His expression, already hard, turned to granite. He did not speak. He just handed the phone to Rafe. Rafe looked at the screen, and I heard him inhale sharply. He turned the phone so I could see it. It was a photograph. A massive, gaudy funeral wreath, all white lilies, was leaning against the door of my small apartment, the one above the flower shop, my old life. Tied to the wreath was a simple white card. The message was one word: congratulations. My knees buckled. Mateo caught me, his hands closing on my arms, steadying me. I saw it then. I saw the whole hideous game. They were not just trying to kill me. They were using me. They were using this baby. They were trying to break him. They wanted to make him a target, to prove to their rivals that he was weak, compromised by a woman and a child. They believed he would make a mistake. They believed he would start a war for his family. I pushed myself out of his grip. I stood on my own. I looked at him. Really looked at him. Not as the man I had loved or the monster I had fled, but as a temporary, necessary, and very dangerous ally. We need rules, I said, my voice flat. A temporary truce. If I stay, we have boundaries. I need a way to tell you to back off, a signal, and I have the right to refuse. He stared at me for a long, silent moment, the fate of two people, and the tiny, unborn life between them, hung in the balance. He nodded. We have rules. He turned to Rafe. His voice was low and lethally cold. Find the mole. Find the person who leaked her medical file. I do not care who it is. A nurse, a doctor, one of my men. Find them and bring them to me. The safe house was a silent, sterile prison of glass and beige furniture. My 72 hours were ticking by in agonizing silence, marked only by the muted, constant hum of Mateo's phone and the low murmur of his voice. He had turned the polished mahogany dining table into a war room. He and Rafe Costa operated in a bubble of focused tension, their energy so potent it felt like the air was vibrating. They were running 2 investigations. The first, and most urgent, was the leak. The second, I pieced together from their clipped conversations, was an attack on his business. A container on one of his legitimate logistics ships had been flagged by port authorities. An anonymous tip had led them to a cache of high-grade synthetic narcotics hidden inside a shipment of hospital-grade respirators. It was a setup, a clean, precise strike designed to cripple his legal operations, the ones he used as a shield. The Harbor Syndicate was not just coming for his family, they were coming for his entire empire. I refused to be a spectator. I refused to be the protected princess in the tower. I took a seat at the opposite end of the long table, my arms crossed. I want to know everything. Mateo did not look up from his laptop. You are safe. Elena. That is all you need to know. No, my voice was quiet, but it cut through the room. He finally raised his eyes. They were cold, distracted. That was not our agreement. You said protection, not imprisonment. If I am a target because of you, I have a right to know what you entails. I want to see the books, the relationships, the gray area you pretend does not exist. A muscle in his jaw tightened. This is not your world. It is complicated. You dragged me back into it. I snapped, my hand instinctively moving to my stomach. You and this baby. I will not be a blind victim, Mateo. I will not sit here and wait for the next attack. I need to know the risks. I demand transparency. I am giving you trust, he said, his voice a low, dangerous rumble. I am giving you my process. It is the process that has kept this city in balance for 10 years. It is the process that will keep you alive. Your process failed, I shot back, the words sharp as glass. I was run down in the street. I was nearly murdered in a hospital bed. Your process is broken, and I will not bet my child's life on it. His gaze was heavy, a physical weight. He stared at me for a long moment before turning back to his screen. The conversation was over, but the battle lines were drawn. Later that day, Rafe returned. He placed a tablet in front of Mateo, his face grim. Victor Hale. The name was familiar. I had seen it on billboards, on the sides of buses. Victor Hale, the city's golden boy, a tech philanthropist who chaired the St. Jude's Hospital Gala, a man lauded for his charity work. Hale is clean, Mateo said, but his voice was skeptical. On the surface, Rafe said, he is the money and the mind behind the Harbor Syndicate. He never touches the product. He just facilitates. He finds the pressure points, the human weaknesses, and he squeezes. Rafe swiped the screen. A collage of faces appeared. His network. This is his lawyer, a man who specializes in washing illicit money through charitable foundations. This is a doctor, high up at St. Jude's. We believe he sells confidential patient data. This is a police lieutenant in the Harbor District, the one who ensures the traffic cameras go blind at the right time. And this. Rafe tapped on the photo of an attractive woman with sharp eyes. Is a reporter at the city paper. She is the one who gets all the anonymous tips that damage your business. Boss and paint Hale as a savior. My blood ran cold. This was the man hunting me. Not a thug, not a gangster, a philanthropist, a man who used the city's goodwill as a shield while he tore it apart from the inside. My 72 hours were nearly up. I was pacing the length of the apartment, the floor-to-ceiling windows showing me a city I could not touch. Lucia Rossi, Mateo's housekeeper and the closest thing he had to a conscience, had retrieved my laptop from my apartment, or what was left of it. I opened it. Desperate for a connection to my old life, there was an email. My heart leaped when I saw the sender. It was from Dr. Klein's office. My doctor. I had called her, and after a long, tense conversation, she had agreed to come here, to the penthouse, to see me. But this email was new. It was an apology. Dear Miss Hart, due to an emergency plumbing issue at our main office, we must move your appointment this afternoon. Please come to our satellite facility at this address. I stared at the address. It was down by the old wharf, a desolate, abandoned stretch of warehouses. It was a trap. My hands started to shake. They knew I had contacted her. They knew her name. They were trying to lure me out. I wordlessly turned the laptop toward Mateo. He read the lines, and his face, already hard, became terrifying. He did not speak. He just handed the laptop to Rafe. Find out how they got this email address. Mateo's voice was lethal. Find out how they knew she contacted Klein. The leak is not just at the hospital. It is everywhere. I could not sleep that night. The walls were closing in. I found Lucia in the kitchen, wiping down an already immaculate counter. She looked up, her dark eyes filled with a sadness that mirrored my own. He is a fool, she said softly, her voice the only warm thing in this cold place. But he is a fool who is trying. He's trying to control me, Lucia, I whispered, leaning against the door frame. It is the same as before. He's trying to control the world, she corrected, her hands stilling. He believes if he holds on tight enough, nothing bad will happen. Do you know how he started? Elena, after his father was gone, before he took over, he was just a boy. I found him sleeping in the pantry of the old restaurant. He was collecting bottles from the street to eat. He swore to me, "When I am in charge, Lucia, no one in this neighborhood will ever go hungry again." And he meant it. She looked at me, her gaze piercing. That foundation he runs is real. Those scholarships are real. That is the man he wants to be. Victor Hale knows that, Haley understands that Mateo's weakness is not his capacity for violence. It is his capacity for loyalty, his need to protect, and now you, and this child, you are the very center of that. Her words settled on me, a heavy, complicated truth. It did not excuse him, but it explained him. The next morning, Rafe walked in. I found her, the leak at St. Jude's. Mateo, who was staring out the window, turned. A nurse. Her name is Quinn, a surgical nurse. Mateo straightened. Bring her to me. No. The word was out of my mouth before I could think. Both men turned to stare at me. Do not bring her to you, I said, my pulse hammering. The plan was forming, sharp and clear in my mind. You will terrify her. You will break her. She will say whatever she thinks you want to hear. Let me talk to her. Bring her here. To me. Elena, this is not a game, Mateo warned. I know it is not. I was standing now, my hands clenched. You said Hale uses weakness. Let me use it too. Rafe, why did she do it? Rafe looked uncomfortable. She has gambling debts. Her husband owes the wrong people. We tracked a deposit into her account for $5,000, 2 hours after you were admitted. She is desperate, I said. She's not evil. She is scared. You go in there with fire, and she will burn. Let me go in with water. Let me try kindness. It is a weapon you do not have. Mateo stared at me, his gaze analytical, weighing the strategy. He was seeing me, perhaps for the first time, not as a liability, but as an asset. 1 hour, he said finally, Rafe will be in the room. They brought her in, Nurse Quinn. She was younger than I expected, pale and shaking, her eyes darting between Rafe's immovable form and me. She looked like she was going to be sick. I asked Rafe to stand by the window. I poured a glass of water and pushed it toward her. Her hands trembled so badly she could not lift it. Quinn, I said softly. I slid my phone onto the table between us, the recording app already running. I'm not going to hurt you, but you have to tell me the truth. Her face crumpled, and the confession poured out. The debts, the threats against her children. They just asked for information on high-profile patients. Then they asked specifically about me, about my condition. Who, I pressed. Who contacted you? A man, she sobbed. He said he worked for a data analytics firm, for Victor Hale. He said Hale was buying data on high-risk pregnancies. For pharmaceutical research, that is what he said. I swear, I did not know they would try to hurt you. He was harvesting vulnerability, not just mine. He was building a database of human misery to leverage. I looked at this broken woman, who'd nearly cost me my child for $5,000. I could let Mateo have her. I could let his process take over. Or I could choose my own. I will make you a deal, I said, my voice steady. You will tell Rafe everything, every name, every number, every scrap of data you remember, in exchange. I looked over at Mateo, who was now standing in the doorway, listening. He will protect you. He will protect your family. He will get your husband into a recovery program, and you will help us stop Hale. She looked at me, her eyes wide with a desperate, unbelievable hope. Yes, she whispered. Anything. I had my confession, I had my weapon. Later that afternoon, Dr. Klein arrived. She was a fortress of professionalism, calm and unshakable. Rafe's men had searched her, vetted her, and escorted her up. She brought a portable ultrasound machine. Let us see how this little one is doing after all the excitement, she said, her voice a soothing balm. She set up the machine in the bedroom. Mateo stood in the doorway, and he was trying to be aloof, the boss overseeing a procedure, but he could not pull his gaze away from the small screen. Dr. Klein smoothed the cold gel over my stomach. The room was silent, holding its breath, and then... thump, 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 thump. Ah! It was the most beautiful sound I had ever heard. Fast, strong, a tiny galloping rhythm of pure life. I was crying, tears of gratitude streaming down my face. I looked at Mateo. He had not moved. He was staring at the small, flickering pulse on the screen. He was rigid, His entire body locked. His hands, those powerful, dangerous hands, were clenched at his sides. And I saw it. His right hand was shaking. The man who faced down killers, who commanded an army, who had ice in his veins. His hand was visibly trembling. He heard the heartbeat. He saw the life. He slowly, deliberately unclenched his fist. He looked up, his gaze meeting mine. The mask was gone. The ice was gone. For one unguarded second, he was not the boss. He was not the monster. He was just a man, staring at a miracle. From that moment, I knew nothing would be the same. Every calculation, every plan, every war he waged would now be measured against that tiny, galloping sound. The baby was real, and he would tear the world apart to protect it. The St. Jude's Gala was the crown jewel of the city's philanthropic calendar. It was also the perfect shield for Victor Hale. He was the event chairman. He would be surrounded by media, by politicians, by the very people he was poisoning. He was untouchable. "You cannot go," I stated. We were in the safe house. It had been 3 days. "I have to," Matteo said. He was fastening his cufflinks. He was wearing a tuxedo that was a shadow made of silk. "My name is on the hospital wing. My foundation is the primary sponsor. If I do not show, Hale wins. He paints me as a coward, or worse, implies I am running from the shipping investigation. He severs my ties to the legitimate world. So you will walk into a trap." "It is a trap for him, too," Rafe Costa said from the doorway. He looked solid, professional. "We have eyes on every entrance. We are sweeping the venue now. He will not make a move while he is shaking hands." I looked at the simple, elegant navy blue dress Lucia had laid out for me. "Dr. Klein said my stress levels are fine. She said I am healthy. The baby is healthy." Matteo stopped. He turned to me. "No, you are staying here. That is not negotiable." "Yes, it is," I said, my voice steady. "Victor is using data. He's using me, a pregnant woman, as a weapon of fear. He thinks I am your weakness, but he is wrong. I am your witness. He is counting on you to be a gangster, Matteo. He's not counting on me to be a baker who can speak." I had a plan. I had written it down. A short speech, not as Matteo Leone's companion, but as Elena Hart, a food stylist, a woman of the city, and a recent patient of St. Jude's. "You want to protect the hospital," I said. "Then let me talk about what real protection means. It means protecting the data of a patient. It means our information is not for sale." He stared at me, his gaze intense, stripping me down to the bone. He was calculating the risk. The old Matteo would have locked me in the room. The new Matteo, the one who had watched his child's heartbeat flicker on a screen, just nodded once. "Wear a coat," he said. "A heavy one." The gala was a sea of glittering jewels and fake smiles. We arrived through a private entrance. Bypassing the main red carpet, Rafe and 2 other men formed a tight diamond around us as we moved. I wore a long, loose cashmere coat, its folds hiding the gentle swell of my stomach. I could feel the eyes on us. Matteo Leone's presence was a shockwave, and he was not alone. The whispers followed us. We were heading for the main ballroom when Rafe's hand went to his earpiece. "Hold, garage team is not responding." We were in a service corridor, halfway between the parking structure and the ballroom. It was suddenly too quiet. "Matteo," Rafe said, his voice low. "Protocol blue. Now, back to the car." Matteo did not question him. He grabbed my hand, pulling me back the way we came. We burst through the heavy door into the concrete chill of the VIP parking garage. It was empty. Our car was 20 yards away. "It is too quiet," Rafe said. He drew his weapon. Matteo pushed me behind him, his own hand inside his tuxedo jacket. A single shot rang out, not a bang, a silenced thwip. Rafe yelled, not in pain. It was a warning. He shoved Matteo, shoved us both, toward a concrete pillar. "Go get her in the car," Rafe shouted. Another shot. I saw Rafe stumble. He did not fall. He turned, raising his own weapon toward the upper landing. He was shielding us, using his body. I saw the red dot, the laser sight dancing on Rafe's chest. "Rafe, no!" I screamed. A third shot, Rafe crumpled to the ground. Mateo grabbed me, shoving me behind the pillar. His face was a mask of pure, murderous rage. I had seen this look once before, the night his father died. He was pulling his gun. He was going to hunt. He was going to kill the man on the landing. Mateo, I grabbed his arm. The baby look. Across the garage, near the main exit, I saw a flash of movement, a second shooter. They were flanking us. This was not an attack. It was an execution. They were boxing us in. Mateo saw it, his eyes locked on the second shooter. He could take one. He could not take them both and protect me. I saw his hand, the one not holding his gun, shaking with the force of his rage. He wanted blood. He wanted to answer this violence with his own. He looked at me. He looked at my hand on my stomach. He let out a breath, a ragged, terrible sound. He did not fire. He lunged, not at the gunman, but at the wall. He slammed his fist into the red fire alarm panel, but he did not just pull the alarm. He smashed the glass on the emergency lockdown button next to it. A deafening siren began to wail. A heavy steel gate began to descend, blocking the garage exit, trapping us in, but also trapping the shooters. He had chosen to contain. He had chosen to block the path of violence instead of adding to it. He hauled me toward Rafe, who was groaning, a dark stain spreading on his shoulder. Rafe, stay with me.
I'll go, boss. Rafe gasped. Get her out.
The ballroom doors flew open. The gala security, alerted by the alarm, spilled out. The shooters were gone, vanished back into the service tunnels. "He is shot," I yelled at the guards. "Officer down, call 911. I was kneeling by Rafe, pressing my hands to his shoulder, the thick cashmere of my coat soaking up his blood. "Elena," Mateo said, his voice raw. He was pulling me up. "Elena, he is secure. You have to go, now." "Where?" "The stage. Do what you came to do." He was pushing me back toward the ballroom, his men forming a wall around us. "Lucia!" He barked into his phone. "It is done. Move." I stumbled into the ballroom. The music had stopped. People were screaming, panicked by the alarm. Victor Hale was on the stage, his hand raised, trying to calm the crowd. "Please, everyone. It seems to be a false alarm. Please, remain calm." He saw me, saw the blood on my coat. His smile faltered. I did not stop. I walked past the security, past the panicked guests. I walked straight to the stairs of the stage. A producer for the live television broadcast tried to stop me. "Ma'am, you cannot be up here." I looked at him. Someone was just shot. Because of him. I pointed at Victor Hale. I walked up the stairs. I took the microphone from his hand. His eyes widened. A flicker of pure animal fear. The cameras were still rolling. The live feed was still on. "My name is Elena Hart," I said. My voice did not shake. It was clear, and it was loud. "I am a pastry chef, and I am a patient of this hospital. An hour ago, I was listed as critical and pregnant in your system. And in that same hour, that information, my private personal medical data, was sold." A gasp went through the room. Victor took a step toward me. "This is highly inappropriate. This woman is unwell." "I am very well, Mr. Hale. Aringi," I said, looking straight into the red light of the main camera. "I'm well enough to know that a man was just shot in your parking garage trying to kill me. He was trying to kill me and my unborn child. Why? Because my personal data was turned into a weapon. Because someone in this city, someone who hides behind charity, is buying our vulnerability." I looked at the tables of stunned donors. "You're here to save lives, but the system you are funding is being used to take them. I am asking you, as a mother, as a patient, as a citizen, to demand better. I am asking this board to sign a public pledge, right now, to protect the data of every patient, to ensure we are not sold, to ensure we are not hunted." Victor Hale's face was pale. He saw his reputation turning to ash on live television. "This is absurd," he shouted, grabbing for the microphone. "This is a personal vendetta. This woman is a jilted ex-girlfriend of Matteo Leone. She is trying to blackmail him." He had said the name. He had made the connection. "It is you who is the blackmailer, Victor," a calm voice said. Lucia Rossi was walking toward the stage. She was not dressed for a gala. She was dressed for business. She was flanked by two men in dark suits, men who were not Matteo's, men who had the distinct, clipped posture of federal agents. She held up a file. "This is the sworn testimony of Nurse Quinn of St. Jude's. It details the $5,000 payment she received for Miss Hart's file. It details the data brokerage firm you own, Mr. Hale, the one that specializes in high-risk pregnancies. And this," she said, holding up a second file, "is a full audit trail from your law firm showing how you launder money from the Harbor Syndicate through charitable donations, including to this very gala." Victor lunged, but not at Lucia. He ran from the stage. He was met at the exit by two more agents. "Victor Hale, you are under arrest." Matteo Leone stood in the doorway, watching. He was not armed. His hands were at his sides. He had not thrown a punch. He had not fired a shot. He had made a phone call to the Federal Bureau of Investigation, his financial investigation partners. He had given them Victor. He had chosen the law. It was over. The dominoes fell. The lawyer was cuffed at his table. The reporter I had seen in the file was already talking to agents, handing over her phone, showing them the messages of coercion. And in the Harbor District, the corrupt police lieutenant was being given his suspension. The entire network, built on human weakness, had crumbled. The ballroom was chaos. I did not care. I ran back to the garage. Rafe was gone. They had taken him. Matteo and I were at the hospital, but we were not in a VIP wing. We were in the surgical waiting room. It smelled of stale coffee and fear. Rafe was in surgery. The bullet had hit high, near the shoulder, but it had glanced off the bone. He was in critical condition. I sat on a hard plastic chair under a fluorescent light. Matteo stood at the window, staring out, his back to me. He was rigid, his tuxedo jacket stained with Rafe's blood. He was vibrating with a rage he had not been allowed to spend. "He will live," I said. It was not a question. It was a prayer. "He will." Matteo's voice was rough. "And when he does, I will find the men who pulled those triggers, and I will end them." The old words, the old promise, blood for blood. No. He turned slowly. His face was a thundercloud. "No. No," I said. I stood up, my whole body aching. "You made a choice tonight, Mel. In that garage, you chose to lock the doors. You did not choose to shoot. You chose the law. You chose them." I pointed to where the agents had been. "You cannot go back." "He is my brother. Elena, he took a bullet for me. For you." "And we will honor that," I was shouting now, my voice echoing in the empty waiting room. "We honor him by living, by building something clean, by being the men and women he thought we were. You cannot have both, Matteo. You cannot have the Federal Bureau of Investigation and your street justice. You cannot have this baby, our family, and that life. You have to choose." I grabbed his hand. It was cold. Promise me, Matteo. From now on, we choose this. We choose the law. We choose a life. Promise me our family will be legitimate." He stared at me, his eyes warring, the storm of a lifetime raging inside him, the man he was, the man he wanted to be. Just then, the door opened. It was Dr. Klein. She was not in a gala dress. She was in scrubs. She must have come the moment she heard. She was wheeling a small, portable monitor. "I thought you might want this," she said gently. She did not wait for an answer. She applied the gel to my stomach. Right there in the waiting room. She found it instantly. Thump, 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 us. The sound filled the sterile silence. Fast, strong, relentless. Matteo looked from the screen to my face. The rage in his eyes did not vanish. It was beaten back. It was chained. The sound of that tiny, furious heart was the only thing in the world that could have held him. He closed his eyes. He let out a long, shuddering breath. The tension left his shoulders. He was not surrendering. He was choosing. He put his hand over mine, on my stomach. He kept it there, feeling the life beneath, listening to the rhythm that had pulled him back from the edge. He opened his eyes. The storm was gone, and he was just a man, exhausted and afraid. "I promise, Elena," he whispered. "I promise." He had let the old motto go. He had let the blood feud die. The aftermath of the gala was a quiet explosion. Victor Hale's face was on the cover of every newspaper, not as the city's philanthropic savior, but as the money and the mind behind the Harbor Syndicate. He was facing a litany of federal charges, from money laundering and wire fraud to conspiracy to commit murder. The Federal Bureau of Investigation, having been handed the keys to his kingdom by Matteo, was tearing his network apart with methodical precision. The syndicate itself, deprived of its head, was in chaos. We heard whispers, passed from Rafe to Matteo, of infighting. The Vipers were turning on each other, a bloody, desperate scramble for power in the vacuum Victor had left. Matteo watched, but he did not engage. He told me it was a temporary peace. "Cutting the head off a hydra just means more heads will grow," he said one night, his gaze fixed on the dark harbor from the penthouse window. He knew someone else was watching, waiting in the shadows to take control. But for now, the immediate threat was gone. Rafe Costa survived. The news came 4 days after the gala, 4 days that I had spent in a blur of exhaustion and adrenaline. He woke up. The bullet had missed his heart by millimeters, but his shoulder was shattered. He would never be a frontline man again, but he was alive. Matteo sat by his hospital bed for an entire day, a silent vigil. I think Rafe's survival, his slow, painful recovery, was the final thing that cemented the promise Matteo had made to me in that sterile waiting room. The price of his old life had been written on his friend's body. Matteo began the change. It was not a sudden conversion. It was a slow, deliberate, and painful restructuring. He started to officially dismantle the gray parts of his logistics empire. He brought in teams of lawyers and forensic accountants. He sold off the high-risk shipping routes, the contracts that lived in the shadows, the entire part of his business that had made his family infamous. It cost him a fortune. I heard his old captains, the men who had served his father, were furious. They saw it as an abdication, a surrender. But Matteo was relentless. He cut away the rot, keeping only the businesses that were truly clean: the restaurants, the coffee roastery, and his beloved community scholarship fund. He was building a firewall between his past and his future, brick by painful brick. I could not sit still. My face had been on live television. I was the mystery woman who had brought down Victor Hale. I chose to use it. I took the story I had told on that stage, and I brought it to the one place in the city that felt safe, the old red brick church in the North End, the one where Lucia lit her candles, with the frantic cooperation of the St. Jude's board, who were desperate to repair their reputation. I helped create a new community program. Elena Hart, a pastry chef, stood in the church basement and taught a workshop, Safe Beginnings. We called it. I taught pregnant women, mostly from the old neighborhoods, how to protect their medical data, how to read the privacy policies, how to understand that their information was a commodity. I was not just a victim anymore. I was an advocate. The most profound change came from Nurse Quinn. Matteo was true to his word and to mine. She was not punished. She and her family were put into witness protection. Her testimony, the one I had recorded on my phone, was the linchpin in the federal case against Hale's data mining operation. Her husband, facing his own demons, was admitted to an inpatient gambling recovery program, one of the best in the country. Matteo paid for all of it: our kindness. Our decision to see her as a desperate woman instead of a criminal had done what violence never could. It had turned a weakness into a strength. It had redeemed a life. Our life together was not easy. It was a constant negotiation. The old Matteo, the one who ruled by control, fought against the new one. He would question me about my walks. about the security protocols at Dr. Klein's office. I would feel the old panic, the familiar sensation of the walls closing in. One night, after a tense argument about my desire to simply go to the grocery store, I stopped him. I pulled out a piece of his own thick, cream-colored stationery from his desk. "If we are going to do this," I said, my voice shaking but firm, "we need rules. We need a map. We cannot just rely on promises made in a crisis." I wrote at the top the family charter. We argued, we debated, we compromised. By the time the sun came up, we had 5 principles, written out and agreed upon. 1 truth, no more secret ledgers, no more hidden dangers. He had to tell me the risks. 2, medical safety. All decisions regarding my body and the baby's health would be made by me, in consultation with Dr. Klein. He could provide security for the process, but he could not dictate the process itself. 3, bodily autonomy. My right to move, my right to decide, my right to say no. 4, financial transparency. His legitimate businesses had to be proven legitimate. I needed to see that the money supporting our child was clean. 5, no proactive violence. This was the hardest one for him. He had to agree to never again be the one to strike first. He could defend, he could protect, but he could not start a war. We both signed it. It was not a legal document. It was a constitution for a family of 2. Soon to be 3. The city saw the changes. Matteo Leone, the man they whispered about in fear, was now in the business pages. He was cooperating with federal investigations. He was downsizing his empire to the new money of the city. He was finally becoming civilized to the old guard, the men who still lived by his father's rules. He was a traitor. He was weak. They saw his refusal to take blood for Rafe's shooting as the ultimate sin. A king who refused his crown, a lion who had pulled his own teeth. The peace we had was fragile, and we both knew it. One evening, as I was sitting by the window, my hands resting on my now enormous stomach, Lucia Rossi sat beside me. She held out her hand. In her palm lay a ring. It was not a diamond. It was a large, square-cut emerald, the color of the deep sea, set in heavy, intricate gold. "This was his mother's," Lucia said softly. "She died when he was a boy, before his father. Lost his way. He wanted you to have it." My breath caught. "Lucia, I cannot. This is... it is a chain." "No," she said, closing my fingers around the cool, heavy metal. "He told me to tell you something very specific. He said, 'This is not to own her. This is to remind me.'" It is his promise, Elena, his mother's goodness, reminding him of his own. I slid the ring onto my finger. It fit perfectly. It was not a chain. It was an anchor. The fear, however, did not just disappear. It was a ghost that lived in the corners of the penthouse. One night, 2 weeks before my due date, I woke up with a sharp, searing pain that wrapped around my back and squeezed my belly like a vice. I cried out, grabbing the sheet, "Matteo, it is time." He was out of bed in a second. All the calm, corporate poise was gone. He was pale, terrified. "Now it is 3 weeks early. The car, Rafe. Rafe is not here." He was scrambling, pulling on his trousers, looking for his keys, his phone. He was a general with no army. "Matteo." The pain gripped me again, and I gasped. "I'm calling the ambulance," he said, his fingers fumbling with his phone. "Matteo, breathe," I yelled. I forced my own wave of panic down, remembering the videos Dr. Klein had made me watch. "Breathe, with me, in and out." He stopped, his hand frozen over his phone, and he looked at me, wild-eyed. The pain began to subside. It faded. I took a slow breath. It is not regular. I waited. Nothing. It was false labor. Braxton Hicks. My body was just practicing for the main event. I looked at Matteo. He was frozen by the door, his shirt half-buttoned, his hair a mess. He looked utterly lost. A shaky laugh bubbled up in my throat. "It is okay," I whispered. "It was just a drill. We are okay." He sagged against the door frame, dropping his head into his hands. "I cannot do this, Elena." I swung my legs over the side of the bed and waddled over to him. I put my hand on his back. "Yes, you can," I said. "We just did. You did not call for your men. You did not panic. You just got ready to drive me to the hospital. You are learning." I was learning, too. I was learning that the fear did not have to be in the driver's seat. The next afternoon, I looked out the window, the black armored sedan that had been his signature. His fortress on wheels was gone from its reserved spot in the garage. In its place was a large, black, incredibly safe, and painfully boring sport utility vehicle. When he came home that night, I met him at the door. "You sold the car." He shrugged off his jacket, his gaze soft. "It was a symbol of the old life," he said. And besides, a small, rare smile touched his lips. It had a terrible safety rating for an infant car seat. He took my hand. "Come with me." He led me down the hall to the room he had always kept as his private study. It had been dark, lined with books and a single, imposing desk. He opened the door. The dark walls were gone, painted a soft, warm white. The heavy curtains were replaced with light, airy linen. And in the center of the room, where his massive desk had once stood, was a simple, pale wood crib. Beside it, facing the window, was a comfortable-looking rocking chair. He had sold his armor. He had bought a cradle. The war was over. The wait was about to begin. When the real labor began, it was nothing like the drill. It was not a sharp, sudden alarm. It was a slow, powerful tide, a deep, primal pull that started in my back and wrapped around the world. Matteo was perfect. He did not panic. He did not issue a single order. He just breathed with me. He remembered everything Dr. Klein had told us. His hand was a steady presence on my back. He drove the big, safe sport utility vehicle through the city streets, stopping at every red light, his knuckles white on the steering wheel, but his voice was a calm, low murmur. "We are okay, Elena. You are doing perfectly. We are almost there." We went to St. Jude's, the same hospital where I'd woken up in a nightmare, but it was a different place now, the hospital. Reeling from the scandal and desperate to prove its adherence to the new privacy pledge I had helped champion, treated us with a quiet, profound respect. Dr. Klein was waiting, her face a mask of calm, professional reassurance. It was long. It was a battle. It was a day and a night of pain so vast I thought it would tear me apart, but Matteo never left. He held my hand, his rough palm a grounding force. He fed me ice chips. He wiped the sweat from my forehead. When I screamed that I could not do it, he pressed his forehead to mine, his eyes locked on me. "Yes, you can. Elena, you are the strongest person I know. You are bringing her home." And then, in a sudden, blinding rush, she was here, a wet, slippery, screaming miracle. They laid her on my chest. She was impossibly small, her cries filling the room with the most beautiful sound I had ever heard. I was sobbing, tears of exhaustion and pure, unfiltered joy. "You did it," Matteo whispered. His voice was broken. He was weeping openly, his face a mess of relief and awe. "Elena, she is perfect." Dr. Klein smiled, her own eyes bright. "She is... Would you like to cut the cord, Dad?" He looked at me, his eyes wide, as if still asking for permission in this new world. I nodded, too tired to speak. A nurse handed him the surgical scissors. His hand, the same hand that had trembled when he first heard her heartbeat, the same hand that had clenched his gun in that garage, was shaking so violently he almost dropped them. He took a deep, shuddering breath. He made the cut. He laughed. It was not a smile. It was a laugh, a sound of pure, astonished delight that seemed to come from his very soul. "Hi," he whispered to the tiny, screaming bundle. "Hi, little one, I am your papa." We held her christening 3 weeks later, in the old red brick church in the North End, the one where Lucia Rossi lit her candles. It was not a grand affair. It was simple, and it was packed. The entire neighborhood, it seemed, came to celebrate. The old women who remembered Mateo's mother, the young families who had received his scholarships, the staff from his restaurants, they all crowded into the pews. I had baked everything myself, spending 2 straight days in the penthouse kitchen, covering it in flour and sugar. I made trays of cannoli, ricotta pie, and rum cake. It felt good. It felt like me. Lucia Rossi held our daughter, who we named Alessandra, after Mateo's mother. Rafe Costa was there, his arm in a complicated sling, his limp permanent, but his smile wider than I had ever seen it. He was Alessandra's godfather. I watched Mateo move through the reception in the church basement. He was not the boss. He was not the capo. He was a father, accepting congratulations, his eyes constantly finding mine across the room, a look of quiet disbelief still on his face. He looked lighter than I had ever seen him, as if the weight of his father's sins had finally been lifted. The following Monday, that lightness became official. He sat at the long mahogany table, not with his captains, but with a team of federal prosecutors. He signed the final document. It was a leniency agreement, in exchange for his full testimony against the remnants of the Harbor Syndicate and the complete, transparent turnover of his remaining gray assets. He was granted immunity. His clean businesses, the restaurants and the coffee roastery, were thriving, strong enough to stand on their own. He was, finally, completely legitimate. 6 months later, I opened my own. I found a small storefront on a cobblestone street with large windows that caught the morning light. I used the money I had saved from my food styling, the money from my 11 months of freedom. I painted the walls a warm, buttery yellow. I installed gleaming new ovens. I called it the Harbor Light Bakery. It was more than a shop. I hung a small sign in the window. 10% of all profits support the Safe Beginnings Fund for at-risk mothers. It was my promise. Rafe, now retired from security and running Mateo's entire community foundation, was my first and most regular customer. The centerpiece of the bakery, hanging on the wall where everyone could see it, was a large framed photograph. It was not of me or Mateo. It was Rafe, his scarred face split in a wide, joyous grin, holding a newborn Alessandra, his once dangerous hands now impossibly gentle. Life became normal. It was a beautiful, stunning, blessedly boring normal. We argued over who would change the next diaper. We walked Alessandra in the park by the harbor, the salt wind in our faces. We were a family. Until the package arrived. It was a small, brown cardboard box, left on the bakery's front step before I opened one morning. No return address. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside, nestled on a bed of tissue paper, was a single, small piece of thermal paper. It was the ultrasound. My first one, the one from St. Jude's, from the day I was admitted, the day of the attack. I turned it over. There was a message, written in a sharp, precise hand. Start over well, V. Victor. My blood ran cold. Victor Hale was in a federal supermax prison, awaiting a trial he could not possibly win. It could not be from him. Was this a threat? A final psychological game? Or was it something else? Was he trying to tell me he had let us go, that the attack in the garage was a performance? Or was it from someone above Victor, a different via new player, letting us know that they had been watching all along, that they had orchestrated this entire piece? I looked over the counter at Alessandra, who was gurgling in her playpen. I looked at the warm, safe bakery I had built, at the sunlight streaming through the window. I folded the small, toxic picture. I walked into the back office. I did not destroy it. I tucked it into the small, locked box where I kept my most valuable recipes. I would not tell Mateo. His new life, his promise, was built on the foundation that the war was over. He had chosen the law. He had chosen peace. This was a reminder. It was a reminder that peace is not a destination. It is not an ending. It is a vigilance. It is a garden that must be tended and guarded. I would not let the ghost of Victor Hale or the fear of a new enemy poison what we had built. Our peace would be guarded by truth and by strength, not by fear. That evening, I stood in the doorway of the bakery, rocking Alessandra, who was bundled against the coming chill. The air was sharp, carrying the clean, familiar smell of salt from the harbor. The streetlights flickered on, casting a warm, amber glow on the old red bricks. Matteo walked up the street. He was not wearing a suit. He was in jeans and a heavy wool sweater, and he looked, for the first time, like he truly belonged to this world, not the one he had left. He smiled, kissing me softly, then kissing the top of Alessandra's head. He reached up and turned the sign on the glass door. It was a sign I had painted myself. It did not say open or closed. It said, Closed Family Day. He wrapped his arm around me, pulling all three of us close. We stood there in the doorway, a small, quiet family, watching the city settle into twilight. I looked at my daughter's perfect, sleeping face. I had run from this man to save myself. I had returned to him to save her. And in the end, we had all saved each other. We chose kindness, not because it was safe, but because it was right, and because she will grow up in a city that knows how to love better. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I am so curious. Where in the world are you listening from? Let me know in the comments so we can connect. Please be sure to subscribe to my channel, Mafia Boss Stories, and like this video. It also helps so much if you support us by hitting the hype button so this story can be heard by more people.